Do you love tapioca pudding, but don't love how many bites, points, or calories it will eat up? Well, I have the perfect solution for you here. This is my delicious, light and creamy tapioca pudding. You won't have anything to feel guilty about eating some of this. So if you'd like to see how this is done, stick around because it's coming up next. Hello and welcome to my kitchen. My name's Roy. I'm a home cook and amateur baker, and I'm here on this channel sharing recipes that have helped me to lose over 125 pounds, whether those recipes are mine or someone else's. Now today is one of mine, but obviously I didn't create the entire recipe because tapioca pudding has been around for quite a while. Now I did do a rice pudding a while back, and if you did not see that, I will card that up here and link that down in the description box because that one is delicious. But I did have someone ask after that, and I'm sorry, I can't remember who, if I could come up with a tapioca pudding recipe, and I did. I first tried it with the instant tapioca, which is much smaller bits of tapioca. The flavor was good, but you didn't get those little pearls of tapioca, which is basically the main reason to have a tapioca pudding, right? But this is an easy recipe, only 6 ingredients, 7 if you count some water, but it comes together pretty quickly. The only difficult in quotes, part is going to be having to temper the eggs, but it's really not that difficult, and I will show you that as we move along. But first, let's go over the ingredients. I have here 3 cups of almond milk. Now you could, if you wanted, use a different kind of milk. And if you wanted to make this a coconut tapioca pudding, you could replace it with coconut milk. And there is another change you'll make, but I'll get to that when I get to that ingredient. Here I have 2 eggs. That is going to help set the custard that we are making. They can be at room temperature or they can be cold. It doesn't matter because we are going to be tempering them. If you thought to take them out, you could, but it's not required. I have here 1/2 cup of small pearl tapioca. There are different types of tapioca. There are large pearls where the pearls are a little bit bigger, and those are the kind of pearls that you would see if you ever have that boba tea. That's basically just tapioca that's been softened. But we're using the small pearl because we want those little pearls, that texture in there, but we don't want those big gigantic pearls. We also don't want, as I said, the instant tapioca because that is a little too fine and you won't get that texture. You'll get great taste, but not the texture that you expect from a tapioca pudding. I have here 1/2 cup of sugar replacement. I am using, as people have asked, I'm using the all-purpose in the raw. That I usually find at a local supermarket, but if I can't find it there, I get it through Amazon. And that is linked in my Amazon storefront down below if anyone is looking for it and you can't find it at local stores. I have here 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract. Now, if you wanted to make this a coconut tapioca pudding, besides changing the almond milk for coconut milk, you would cut this vanilla down to 3/4 of a teaspoon and add the other 3/4 of a teaspoon as coconut extract. Because a lot of coconut milks alone don't have enough oomph to get that coconut flavor. So you do want to have a little bit of coconut extract just to help that along. And here I have 1/8 teaspoon of salt. You can just do a generous pinch. You don't have to measure it out. And that is just to kind of enhance all of the flavors. You could leave it out if you want and it wouldn't affect it too much, but it does really add a nice little depth of flavor to all of the other ingredients. And last but not least, I have here about 1 cup of room temperature water. It doesn't have to be exactly a cup because what we're going to do is the first thing is we're going to soak our tapioca pearls in the water. So I'm just going to pour that in right now. And that's mostly just to hydrate this and to help get those tapioca pearls to plump up a little bit. They will get bigger than they are there. But we're going to have to leave this here for about 1/2 hour to let those plump. That's going to reduce the overall cooking time of our pudding. So I do like soaking it. You could do it without it, but the cooking time may be extended quite a bit. So just a half an hour in the water, and I'll be back to get us started. Okay, so I've strained off my tapioca so that it's no longer sitting in the water, and you can see how plump it's gotten. So it's really plumped up a bit bigger than it was when we started off. But it took about 20 minutes or so before I noticed that the water wasn't really soaking in anymore. That's all you need, is really to wait until they're plumped and not absorbing any more water. So that could be about 20-30 minutes. Now, I did have to add a little bit more water, more than a cup, because it started to absorb enough so that tapioca was sitting out of the water. So I did add a little bit more water. So if that does happen, just add a little bit more water to it. It's no big deal. Then you're going to strain it as I did here. Okay, and now I'm going to take my almond milk and add that to a saucepan along with the sugar replacement and the salt. And I'm going to set this over medium-high. I have it on medium-high to get it to heat up quicker. If you're a little more patient than I am, you could put it on medium. And what you're going to do is just let that heat up just until you start to see bubbles. You don't want it to boil. You just want it to get hot enough that you start to see bubbles forming. And that will take probably about 5 minutes or so on medium-high. Now, tapioca pudding, I learned the hard way, is one of those things that you do not want to boil. If you let it boil when the tapioca gets in there, it is going to not be a nice creamy texture as you want. It's going to turn into a thick, rubbery, still delicious, but a thick, rubbery texture. And you don't want that. So we're going to be very careful with the heat on this. So I'll let the milk mixture come up to temperature, and I'll be back. All right, so the milk is just starting to bubble a little bit. I'm going to turn this down to almost the lowest setting that I have. As I said, you do not want this to boil or be too hot, or you're going to get a rubbery texture. So you want this down as low as you can get it. I'm putting mine on 2. I have a 1 to 10 number system on my stovetop, and I'm just doing a 2. 1 is a little too low for me, but you want this down very low. So you're going to just add in the tapioca. We're going to stir that around. And now we are going to cook this. Now this is where a lot of variations come in when I was reading recipes. Some say it'll take about 5 minutes, some say 45 minutes, some say an hour for this to start to thicken up. Usually, I think because I've pre-soaked them, the tapioca will be plump and help this to thicken within usually about 10 minutes. But if you didn't pre-soak your tapioca, it could take longer. So you can do it without soaking it. I've done it that way. But I like a little bit of time reduction on this recipe, so I prefer just letting them sit there and I don't have to do anything to them. But we will time it. We will let you know exactly how long it took. You just want this to cook down a little bit, again, on one of the lowest settings you can have, just to keep it warm. And you want to stir it on occasion, and you'll notice it start to thicken. And once it's thick enough, I will be back and we will move on. Okay, so it's been about 12 minutes or so, and you can see that the milk has thickened, but you don't want it really thick just yet. But if you like your pudding really thick, because this will give you a nice light creamy texture, if you like it a little thicker, you could let this go a little bit longer. And just remember that it is going to thicken up as it cools also. And it's going to thicken up with what we need to do next. So what we have to do next is to temper our eggs before we put them in there, because if we just put our eggs right into this hot mixture, they're going to start to cook and clump We don't want that. We want to bring them as close to this temperature before adding it in as we can. So I'm going to first break up the eggs. Now I have underneath this little bowl with the eggs on it, I have a damp towel. The reason I have the damp towel there is because I need to spoon with one hand and whisk with the other. I can't hold on to the bowl. So as I break up the eggs and whisk them, that damp towel is going to hold the bowl in place for me, so I don't have to worry about it sliding all over the place. Now you could use a dry towel, but I find the damp towel is much better because that moisture clings to the bowl and keeps it from moving. So we're going to take a ladle and just gradually ladle some of this hot mixture into our eggs and keep whisking and whisking, because you don't want the eggs to cook as you're adding this in. And if they just sit there, it's likely that that will happen. Okay, we're going to do another bit of pudding mix in here, again, to try to bring it up to the right temperature to add it into our pudding itself. And I usually go for 3 ladlefuls. That's usually about enough to get it to the right temperature for me. And it's just about there. So now this egg mixture, if you feel the bowl, is rather warm. So what we need to do now is incorporate the eggs into our pudding. So we're going to do the reverse now. We're going to whisk, whisk, whisk on our pudding mixture as we gradually add the eggs in, because the eggs are going to help us to thicken up our pudding here and also give us a nice creamy texture and some richness from those yolks. So now at this point, I will turn the heat back up to medium and let this cook. Now I did stir frequently as the milk was coming up. I'd stir on occasion just so none of it was sitting on the bottom for too long. I'm going to do the same thing now that the eggs are in there. I'm just going to whisk on occasion as it heats up and thickens. And this will take probably about 5 or 6 minutes. Now, if you wanted, you could make this a chocolate tapioca pudding at this point. Now that you've added in the eggs, you could take about a 1/3 cup of some sugar-free chocolate chips. I prefer Lily's, but whichever ones you use. Melt those down in the microwave, and once the eggs are incorporated, whisk the chocolate in here. You could also do that if you're using the coconut to make a chocolate coconut tapioca pudding. So there is that option as well. As you know, I like to give you options. Now, if your tapioca starts to bubble a little bit, because we're only on medium, so you don't want it to go bubbling, as I said, that will create a rubbery texture. So if you see it starting to bubble, as long as they're just little gentle bubbles, just whisk it around and that will help to distribute them a little bit. Okay, so it's been about 6 minutes and this is where I usually like it. You can see it's thickened, but it's not really thick and gloopy like a pudding. This is going to set as it chills. So I like it where it's a little looser of a pudding texture. But if you prefer, as I said, a little thicker, you would have let the tapioca thicken a little bit more before adding the eggs. So I'm going to turn this off now and we're going to add in our vanilla extract. You do not want to add the vanilla in while it's on the heat still, where it's going to dissipate and lose its flavor. That's why you always add vanilla into anything cooked like this at the end. Okay, so that's in there. Now let me just clean up a little bit and we'll move on to putting them into our ramekins. All right, so I am doing this as serving 4. So I have 8-ounce ramekins here. If you want more servings, you want a little less of a serving than I prefer, you can spread this out to 6 or 8, however you decide to do it. I like, as many of you know, a hefty dessert, so I'm going with these 8-ounce ramekins. And I'm just going to take our pudding and ladle some of that into each of these cups. And I will switch to my spatula to get the last of this pudding mixture out and into my ramekin here. Now you don't have to have ramekins. You could put these in teacups if you wanted to do a little like tea party looking thing. So it doesn't have to be a ramekin specifically. You could just do it in a bowl. That's your call. Okay, I'm just going to take a damp paper towel and wipe off if I've spilled any on the edges here, just because we now have to wrap these in plastic wrap, so I want to make sure that the plastic wrap will cling well. Okay, so I'm going to take my plastic wrap and cut this piece that should cover that, but it's so long I'm actually going to slice this in half just so I can get two covered with one bit of the plastic wrap. Now, this is the important part. You have to take the plastic wrap and make sure it is touching the surface of the pudding. If you don't, a skin could form, which is not very pleasant. I don't know if you've ever had that happen, where it's kind of like almost like a plasticky skin on top. It's not pleasant to eat. So you want to have this touching the top of our tapioca pudding. So you're just going to move it around, press in with your fingers, and make sure that it is on top of the pudding, then fold down the edges, and there you have it. Now, this has to refrigerate for at least 2 hours. So I'm going to finish wrapping these up, and I will be back in 2 hours when it's time to eat. Okay, so there we have my 4 tapioca puddings, but I did want to show you how soft it is and how thick, because even though it looked very liquid going in, it is definitely a pudding now, and a tasty pudding at that. Now, you can serve this warm if you just wanted to take it off the heat and let it come to room temperature still warm. You can do that. But we really like it when it's chilled and set. But that's your call. Now you can store these in the fridge for about 5 or 6 days. Honestly, it never lasts that long around here. But you can also freeze it if you leave it with the plastic directly on top as it is here. You can put it into an airtight container or wrap it tightly with some foil to make sure no air can get in. You can store it for 2, probably 3 months in the freezer and allow it to thaw completely before serving. I would take it out maybe the night before I wanted to have it and put it in the fridge so that it would slowly come to temperature but still keep the chill. But there you have it, my light tapioca pudding. Now, as I said, I'm doing it as a serving for 4. You can change that all you like, but that is what I'm going to give you the bites, points, and calories and macros for. So if you were to have 1 serving of this, it would be only 3 Better Balanced bites or Old Blue points, or current points, I guess. I am on the Healthy Better Balanced plan, which is equivalent to the old WW Blue plan, which I guess is now the plan that they're using overall. And I do want to apologize. As you can probably tell, my throat and jaw muscles are giving me a little bit of trouble. You never know what you're going to get. But you are going to get a delicious tapioca pudding for just 3 bites or points. Now, if you were following calories, 1 serving as I did it here would be 133 calories. And if you are following macros, the fat would be 4.3 grams. The carbs would be 43.2 grams. The fiber would be 0.4 grams. And the protein would be 3.9 grams as I did it, serving 4. So I hope that you enjoyed this video and this recipe. And if you did, I would appreciate it if you would do the usual: like, subscribe, comment, share, and hit the notification bell for the next time I upload any sort of video. I did ask recently on the community page of my channel if people would be interested if I did a live chat, and quite a few people were interested. So if you hit the notification bell, and I do that, and you don't know when it's coming up, because I will announce it before I do it, then the notification bell will let you know that there is a live video going on. Now, the recipe for this, of course, will be linked directly down below in the description box, as well as the link to my blog itself if you're looking for any of my recipes, like that rice pudding I was telling you about, if that's your preference over tapioca. Also down there, you will find links to my Amazon storefront if you're looking for ramekins like I have here. I do have some on my Amazon storefront, my Built Bar Rewards, Fresh Rewards, Skinny Syrups code, and my social media, both my Instagram and 2 Facebook groups that I belong to, if you'd like to follow me there. So go check out the description box for all sorts of information. So I think that we have waited long enough, and I am ready for some delicious tapioca pudding. And I hope that soon you will enjoy some yourself. So until next time, bye.